Welcome to Shelf Improvement. I'm Cheryl. Thanks for being here, Mom. Let's chat about books I didn't finish this year. I was going to make a video of all the books I didn't finish this year, and that was going to be about 20 minutes, and nobody's going to sit through that. So this video is books I didn't finish, but they're really good, and I recommend them, and I'll talk to you about why I didn't finish them. I think a lot of people feel guilty about DNFing a book. They feel bad that they spent the money, or they feel an obligation to the author. And I do think if you start a book, you should give it a chance because somebody did put a lot of themselves into it. I read about 100 pages. It's got 100 pages to convince me that it's good. If it's longer, I try to read about 20% of it because sometimes it takes me a while to get into a book. From what I've picked up on BookTube and Discord, I think it takes me longer to get into a book than it does most people. And then, of course, sometimes it takes a book a while to get off the ground. By the same token, life is too short to read a book I'm not enjoying. There are a finite number of books you can read in your life, so read what you like. I give you permission. If you're not enjoying a book and you've given it a fair shot, chuck it. Now on to the books. The first one is At Swim Two Birds by Flann O'Brien. Here is part of the Goodreads blurb. At Swim Two Birds is the story of a young, lazy, and frequently drunk Irish college student who lives with his curmudgeonly uncle in Dublin. When not in bed, where he seems to spend most of his time, or reading, he is composing a mischief-filled novel about Dermot Trellis, a second-rate author whose characters ultimately rebel against him and seek vengeance. So you can tell this sounds like a very funny book. I put this on my TBR because Lionel Shriver gave it 5 stars, and a book that Lionel Shriver gives 5 stars is a book I need to read. This was very well written and very funny. But it's written in that sort of James Joycean style, so it takes some effort to get into the rhythm or the mindset of that kind of prose, and frankly, I just was not in the mood to work that hard. But I will come back to it, and I do recommend it. Speaking of books you have to work at to read, let's talk about Game of Kings by Dorothy Dunnett. If you watch Klaus over at The Contradictorian, this is his favorite book, as I'm sure you know if you watch his channel. This takes place in 16th century Scotland. It's historical fiction. It was very witty. I could tell it was well written, but I guess you need to know more about Scottish history, or I don't know. There are all these barons and earls, and there's not really any introduction to the characters or their relation to each other, so there wasn't really that much background to ease us in. I mean, there is some background. We learn that the protagonist, Francis Lymond, was accused of treason 5 years ago, and he's coming back to Scotland. But for the most part, I was a lost ball in tall weeds. I may be too dumb for this book. I don't know. I'm going to try to read up on it, and then maybe even try to read up on Scottish history a little bit, and then tackle it again. The third book in the It's Not You, It's Me category is A Canticle For Leibowitz by Walter Miller. I'm sure you've heard of this book. It's a sci-fi classic. It's got loads of good reviews. It's well written. The main reason I DNF'd this book is because I was expecting a sort of gritty dystopian novel. That's not what this book is at all. It takes place in a post-apocalyptic world, like post-nuclear Holocaust, and that's what gave me the impression. Plus, the cover looks dark and foreboding. The novel is about this group of monks who are in charge of preserving the relics, or like the holy scrolls of this pre-nuclear Holocaust world. And they're in charge of replicating things like squirrel cage diagrams and grocery store lists which they don't know that's what they are. So there's a lot of humor in this book. It's really more of a philosophical book about what makes something sacred, what gives meaning to life, etc., which would normally be right up my alley. But because I was expecting like Cormac McCarthy's The Road or something, I just couldn't get into it. But I may try again at some point. I don't know, does that ever happen to you where you start a book and you're expecting one thing and then the book turns out to be completely different, and it's difficult to recalibrate your mental compass, at least for me. Okay. Next is The Archive of Alternate Endings by Lindsay Dreger. Okay, let me read you part of the blurb. Tracking the evolution of Hansel and Gretel at 75-year intervals, siblings reimagine, reinvent, and recycle the narrative of Hansel and Gretel into cosmic experiences of tragedy. This sounded really different. It was beautifully written, just gorgeous prose, but I could not connect with the story for a lot of reasons. It's written in a way that kind of holds you at arm's length. Like, there's no real immediacy. Also, it's told in a passive voice, and the characters don't have names, and it's super abstract. So all those things together just left me feeling quite disconnected. This is really a short book. It's only like 150 pages, so you would think I would have powered through, but I checked it. But you might like it, especially if you like more abstract books. Lindsay Dreger has written a few other books, which I would like to read and see if I can get into them, because her writing is a stunner. Last in this category is Excellent Women. I was really enjoying this book, but alas, I dropped it in the bathtub. So that was the end of that. It was like full immersion, soaked. Even when I dried it out, it was unreadable. It was just ruined. So anyway, what I read seemed good. It's about a 30-something woman, single, living in the UK in the 50s. It seemed very sweet and also very sharp-witted. The main character, Mildred, is busy making a life for herself, enjoying herself, but people keep discounting her choices, assuming that she doesn't want to live alone or that she has a lot of time on her hands to help everybody because she's single. And then men assume that she's in love with them. So all of the pitfalls of being single in the 50s. So it's kind of a story of her everyday adventures. If that sounds like a book that might interest you, send me your copy when you're finished. Those are the 5 books I recommend, even though I didn't finish them. Last on my list of DNFs, at least in this video, is one you might like, maybe. I can't really recommend it, but it may suit your fancy. It is a classic, and that is It Can't Happen Here by Sinclair Lewis. I read Babbitt by Sinclair Lewis, and it's kind of trying to do the same thing, but Babbitt was just way better. It's a commentary on life, the same way that this one is, sort of. It's written in the 30s. It's the story of how easily fascism could take over America. So he sort of writes satire. It's about a president who becomes a dictator. So pretty relevant then and now. Now, to describe why I didn't like this, let me read you a quote from the introduction. Listen to this. Many reviewers complained about the novel's loose, melodramatic plot, flat and even corny characters, weak cliched dialogue, padded political discourse, awkward sentimentality, and heavy-handed satire. That's the introduction. You know, the part of the book that's supposed to sing the praises of the book you're about to read? Who was Sinclair Lewis's editor? Why did they not red pencil the crap out of this book? And that's exactly how the book is. It is flat and heavy-handed. What Lewis is saying is important, and he can really distill ideas and make you think, but this would have been better as a volume of nonfiction or even a series of lectures. It's in a similar vein to G.K. Chesterton, who was also a brilliant thinker if you read his nonfiction, but the guy could not write fiction because he was too busy beating you over the head with the point he was trying to make to write an interesting story. That's it for now. Hopefully I mentioned something that was interesting to you. If you listen this far, leave me the squid emoji so I know you stopped by. If you like this, you can give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, you may want to do some soul searching. I don't know. I do appreciate you listening. Thanks for keeping me company. Bye.